Diplomatic efforts to end the Russia-Ukraine war are ramping up. Talks are underway in Washington between a Ukrainian delegation and high-level American officials. However, fighting continues to rage on the ground. Overnight, a Russian strike hit Kyiv, killing one person and injuring 19, including 4 children. Russian forces say they killed over 260 Ukrainian soldiers near Krasnoarmysk. Moscow's troops also continued to advance in eastern Donetsk and pushing Ukrainian fighters from key districts in Dmitrov. Meanwhile, Russian air defenses claim to have shot down 230 Ukrainian drones in the last day, along with a US-made HIMARS rocket. On the Russian side, Ukrainian drone attacks in the Belgorod region reportedly killed 2 civilians and injured another. A vehicle and a home were damaged in these strikes near the border. Ukraine also launched naval attacks on Saturday using domestically made Sea Baby drones. These struck 2 Russian oil tankers, the Kairos and the Virat, off Turkey's Black Sea coast. These tankers are believed to be part of Russia's shadow fleet used to skirt international sanctions. Russia condemned the strike earlier today, calling it a terror attack. Meanwhile, a Ukrainian delegation in the United States, they are meeting top aides of US President Donald Trump for high-stakes talks aimed at shaping a peace plan to stop the war.
Diplomacy remains active. The American side is being constructive, and it is quite realistic to finalize steps in the coming days to determine how to end the war with dignity. The Ukrainian delegation has the necessary directives.
In Washington, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner are in discussions with the Ukrainian delegation. They are negotiating the 28-point peace plan proposed by Trump. The Ukrainian delegation includes Andriy Natov, the head of Ukraine's armed forces, Andriy Sybiha, Ukraine's foreign minister, and Rustem Umerov, the head of Ukraine's Security Council. Meanwhile, Russian President Putin has reportedly signaled that Russia does not view the U.S. proposed peace plan as serious. Reports say he is not interested in ending the war on the rapid timeline desired by the Trump administration, treating the proposal more as a suggestion. They say to be using this stance to justify delaying the peace process. And joining us live from Oslo, Norway, is Dr. Glenn Diesen. He's a professor of international relations at the University of Southeastern Norway and an editor at the Russia in Global Affairs Journal. Mr. Diesen, it's good to see you again. Thank you very much for making time for us. What do you make of Putin's statement? Let's begin from there. He says that the 28-point peace plan by President Trump is not serious. It's just a suggestion.
Well, I think it was interpreted as an opening position, somewhere where they could start off the debates or discussions. But overall, the Russian position hasn't really changed since the beginning of this conflict. That is, they want Ukraine's neutrality, which means not just no NATO, but also no NATO troops on Ukrainian soil. But they also insist on caps on the Ukrainian army and require territorial concessions according to what they demand. So again, the overarching concern for Russia is that the West doesn't really want to actually end the war, that it's merely another Minsk agreement, that is a temporary freeze until the NATO countries can rebuild the Ukrainian army and continue fighting again. So the Russians, now that they're at the cusp of a victory, they're playing a very hard, putting a very hard bargain up and demanding a lot of concessions, which is difficult for the Ukrainians to accept. But from this perspective, the Russian position tends to be quite predictable, exactly because it hasn't changed. No, you are correct though. There's no, I see it as very unlikely that they would accept the position as it stands. That is 600,000 or 800,000 Ukrainian troops with ambiguity regarding their relationship with NATO going forward. It's hard to imagine that anyone in Moscow would accept anything like this.
Dr. Diesen, if Putin thinks that the proposal is not serious and says it's a suggestion, then why would he be meeting with the special envoy, Steve Witkoff? Do you think that meeting is necessary?
Well, I think any diplomacy at this point is good, but I also see the American position as having to pull in the Ukrainians. Keep in mind that any talk Zelensky does with the Americans and the Russians in terms of accepting permanent neutrality or seizing any territory, this is very controversial at home. He has a lot to risk from the nationalists, especially. So I think the Americans are playing a game where they're gradually pulling the Ukrainians and Russians closer to the table. Keep in mind that before Trump came into office, Zelensky refused to even have any of his team in meeting with the Russians. So they've already come a far way in terms of bringing them forward. And I think also that the pressure from Trump, ironically, could help actually Zelensky because it makes it possible for him to make greater concessions if they think that the alternative is that America will walk away from Ukraine.
Dr. Disen, finally and very quickly, what do you make of the two factions? There is Europe and then there is America. America has their 28-point peace plan. Europe has a countermeasure and a counter-proposal.
Well, the Americans, I think, want to put an end to this war. The Europeans would like to prolong it and pull America into this. So the European position is essentially Ukraine should be allowed to join NATO. European troops should be stationed in Ukraine. They can have whatever size of the military they want. Russians should pay reparations. So in short, the Europeans want Russian capitulation. And once this fails, they would like for the US to go pulled deeper into this war. So I think that the European and American position are very different at this time. That being said, I think the Americans would be quite happy to see a political settlement where they have the option of using Ukrainians in the future again if they would like to put more pressure on Russia. But I think, yeah, talking about Western proposals, I think is wrong now because the Americans and Europeans have diverged to a huge extent over the past months.
Dr. Glenn Disen, it's good to see you. Thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thank you.